Say if I had to put one word to it, it'd be inspirational. And that is because, when you step back and you look at the scope of her life, I think it's easy and wonderful to celebrate her successes, but it's also equally important to remember, what she had to endure, right? The path, these paths that, these rugged paths that lead her there, which is to say, she lives her entire life as a black woman in the Jim Crow South. So she's dealing with, racism and sexism are daily realities. They never go away, right? She's having to overcome those on, her entire life. We started talking about this earlier, but she, at the same time, over the course of her life, has to endure really an unspeakable amount of tragedy within her own family, right? Starting again with the unexpected death of her stepfather, when she's just 11 years old, but that goes on to include, right, outliving her mother, her younger brother, her husband, 2 of her 3 sons, right? And of course, not to say anything again about, the fact that it again was her son who accidentally killed her husband. I mean, and all the fallout that comes as a result of that. So, so she's dealing with an unspeakable amount of tragedy within her own family. She spends the final years of her life battling the effects of a physical disability, which forced her to use a wheelchair really effectively to get around for the final 7 years of her life. And if all of that weren't enough, I mean, she dies in 1934 during the Great Depression. And for someone who had, spent so much time and effort into really helping to build up the black middle class, right, and bringing economic empowerment to the black community. That had to been difficult, right? She's pushing back against it when she can, but there's only so much she can do, on her own, and so she's kind of forced to watch a lot of these economic gains that she was so instrumental in producing, just to watch a lot of that, get reversed. And so at the end of the day, I often tell visitors when they come here, right, when we step back and we think about, all of those obstacles, right, it becomes pretty fair to say, the world is throwing everything in the kitchen sink at this woman, right? But I've always felt that, one of the greatest gifts she leaves us is the memory of how she responds to it, right? Because what we see all of these obstacles over and over and over again in so many different forms, kind of constantly kind of appearing before her. But what we never see at any point is her giving in to them, letting her life be defined by them.